On the battlefield, Russian forces launched one of their largest attacks near the town. What followed was a brutal engagement that turned their ambitious assault into a devastating spectacle of failure. These assaults were launched simultaneously and with effective coordination among Russian units to apply heavy pressure on the Ukrainian defensive line and expose its weakest points. But Ukraine has established a lethal 16-mile deep kill zone behind the front lines using millions of explosive drones, Forbes reports. This massive drone network has dramatically reshaped the battlefield. Ukraine's drone supremacy has played a key role in slowing Russian advances in eastern Ukraine and increasing Russian casualties. In new footage shared online, a drone destroys a Russian T-72 tank hiding inside a warehouse. First, the Russian T-72 tank moves into a warehouse. After the tank movement is seen by Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance. Then, the Ukrainian operator sends a FPV drone to attack and immediately explode inside the warehouse. As a result, the tank is completely burned. Outside the warehouse, a Ukrainian FPV drone finds a Russian BMD-2 parked, then directly hit, causing an instant explosion. Fire is seen billowing from the vehicle after the explosion occurred. In brutal attack on the front line shows a Russian tank equipped with an electronic warfare system and turtle armor. Then, a Ukrainian quadcopter drone gets positioned on top of the tank and drops a grenade right on top of it, and the impact ignites a fire on the Russian tank. This forces the Russian troops hiding under the tank to run away, but they are also targeted by the Ukrainian drone. Another FPV drone flies under the tank, but it doesn't detonate. However, this frightened the Russian troops hiding under the tanks. They came out and ran into the bushes. A Ukrainian drone gets positioned on top of the Russian troops and drops some very accurate grenades, disabling the Russian troops. Meanwhile, as reported by Reuters, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he was ready to meet Vladimir Putin in Turkey after U.S. President Donald Trump told him publicly to immediately accept the Kremlin leader's proposal of direct talks. Zelensky's suggestion of a meeting with Putin capped a dramatic 48 hours in which European leaders joined Zelensky in demanding a 30-day ceasefire from Monday, only for Putin to make a counter-proposal to instead hold the first direct Ukraine-Russia talks since the early months of the 2022 invasion. The Ukrainian leader had responded guardedly earlier on Sunday after the Russian president, in a nighttime televised statement that coincided with prime time in the U.S., proposed direct talks in Istanbul next May 15th. Zelensky, too, had said Ukraine was ready for talks if Moscow agreed to the 30-day ceasefire. Yet Trump, who has the power to continue or sever Washington's crucial supply of arms to Ukraine, took a different line. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Sunday that he was starting to doubt that Ukraine will reach a ceasefire deal with Russia, and he urged Ukraine to meet with Russian officials in Turkey on Thursday to negotiate. "I'm starting to doubt that Ukraine will make a deal with Putin," Trump wrote on Truth Social. President Putin of Russia doesn't want to have a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine, but rather wants to meet on Thursday in Turkey to negotiate a possible end to the bloodshed. Ukraine should agree to this immediately, Trump wrote on Truth Social. Trump said that meeting would mean the two parties, as well as European leaders and the U.S., would then be able to determine whether or not a deal is possible. Truth said that the meeting would mean the two parties, as well as European leaders and the U.S., would then be able to determine whether or not a deal is possible. Russia and Ukraine have both courted Trump. Kyiv is desperate to unlock more of the U.S. military backing it received from his predecessor, Joe Biden. Moscow senses an opportunity to get relief from a barrage of economic sanctions and engage with the world's biggest economy. Putin sent Russia's armed forces into Ukraine in February 2022, unleashing a conflict that has killed hundreds of thousands of soldiers and triggered the gravest confrontation between Russia and the West since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. But with Russian forces grinding forward, the Kremlin chief has offered few, if any, concessions so far.